I don't see it happening. First of all, when I first started hearing, I was thinking, this is a smokescreen. Jerry knows he's going to get the best corner in the draft, most likely. They're going to have their pick, and we know who it's going to be, right? And that's what they need. So why, and by the way, are we sure that Surtain is not the best player in the draft or best defensive player in the draft? Are we sure? But also, the Cowboys have a potent offense. And by the way, they got a lot of tight ends. None of them are like Kyle Pitts, but they're good. You know, Blake Jarwin's coming back, and they signed a couple guys. They're good. They're solid there. And they have receiving targets everywhere you look. But even more importantly than that, Stephen A., when I look at the Cowboys, I keep going back to that Johnny Manziel draft. Obviously, the showman that Jerry is, how could he not have been tempted? He even publicly said so. And what they wind up doing? Zach Martin. Stephen Jones, I think, as he's come up in the organization, has had a good kind of steadying effect on his dad. They make this, the reason that the Cowboys usually have pretty good drafts is they make the solid football move normally, and I expect that to happen again. And in this case, Jerry's even telling you, look, if someone falls to him, if Pitts is there for him at 10, yeah, he'll take Pitts. I believe that. But I don't think he's going to, as he said, trade draft capital to move up and grab him when they have other needs and they're in a great position to fill them.
Maximus. You still haven't learned, buddy. Let me tell you something, buddy, right now.
Oh, here we go.
Are you aware of the fact that the Dallas Cowboys gave up the fifth most points last year, and in giving up over 2,500 yards rushing was the second worst rushing attack and rushing defense rather than all of football? Obviously, they have some needs on the defensive side of the ball, so it makes perfect sense that they would go that route. And then when you think about the defensive side of the ball with Trevon Diggs playing one of the corner spots for them and looking quite impressive, I might add, you would think Surtain out of Alabama would be the way to go because obviously he's the best cornerback in the draft, and having him to shore up one side of the field really elevates your defensive prowess. That would be the logical step, right, Max? Right, Molly? But you are so wrong. I'm not saying they're going to take offensive play. They're going to move up to take Pitts, but I don't put anything past that but my buddy Jerry Jones, and here's why. What did Jerry Jones do? The most notable thing that Jerry Jones did this offseason? Jerry Jones signed Dak Prescott to that long-term deal that he's been after. And think about that for a second here. Jerry Jones likes to look good. Well, what will make Jerry Jones look good better than Dak Prescott looking all world, validating that money that Jerry Jones decided to dole out to that man? Think about this. Amari Cooper looked good, had a 1,000-yard receiving season. CeeDee Lamb, your rookie last year, had nearly 1,000 yards receiving. Mike Gallup is still there. You get a tight end, and especially with Ezekiel Elliott taking a step back, you look at Dak Prescott, you just paid him that money. You want him to play lights out. You want your investment to look like a good one. And what you do, you go there and you get a generational tight end like Pitts. And you say, excuse me, what about the defense? What about the defense? Well, Jerry Jones is able to say, hey, it was schemes. Schematically speaking, I mean, we shouldn't have played the defense that Mike Nolan was playing. He's no longer there. We got Dan Quinn. He used to be a head coach in the Atlanta Falcons. We know how that worked out. But guess what? He was an elite defensive coordinator in Seattle before he got to Atlanta. So as a result, since we're going to be doing things differently schematically, the Marcus Lawrence will look better, and so will the rest of that defense. And we obviously got a number of picks moving down the line to address those concerns. Go for the best talent. And if Jerry Jones can pull it off, Max Kellerman,
you know what, though,
that's exactly what he's going to do.
You know who he'd have to trade with to get that done? He'd have to trade with San Francisco.
He'd
have to trade with San Francisco because
but we're not talking about what's going to happen.
Cincinnati, and Miami, Pittsburgh's not going to be there.
Don't change the subject. We're not talking about what will happen because we understand that nobody's going to do it. But what I'm saying to you is that if he could, he would.
Well,
if he could, he would sit up there and say, hey, you know what? This is something he would do. I don't think it's going to happen either, but only because he can't.
Stephen A., what I'm saying is it wouldn't be impossible to make a trade with San Francisco.
Not impossible, but highly
because if
unlikely.
San Francisco wants their choice of quarterback, it is unlikely Atlanta, Cincinnati, or Miami takes one. San Francisco could move down a little bit. It would have to involve another team, I suppose.
I don't think they're moving down.
Still wind up with their quarterback.
I don't think they're moving down. You know, he's a gunslinger, that Jerry Jones. You understand? He don't want to do that. He don't want to do that. He want to roll the dice. He want to take a chance. You understand? That's what he wants to do. If he could do it, he will. He won't do it because I don't think he can.
All facts.
he would.
All facts. All right. He just said he wants to do something unconventional. You know, he's trying to stir the pot and have a little fun with the media.
He has a
That's
fucking
what he's
Cowboys.
about. All right. We'll leave it there. What pay-per-view and fan meow? It was announced Tuesday night. The announcement didn't specify how many rounds they will fight or what size gloves they will use. Stephen A., you are up first here. Is this fight bad for boxing?
I think it is. I don't like it. I'm not knocking the Pauls, Jake Paul, Logan Paul, like some people have, because paying attention to the world of boxing, promoters have been, controlling the sport for far too long. And when you have promoters controlling the sport, not giving you the fights that you want to see, the fact that a guy like Jake Paul has about 14.8 million, Instagram followers, I have to pay attention to that. I mean, I'm looking at Logan Paul's numbers here. He's got 19.1 million Instagram followers. So he's got an audience there, him and his brother. And, I get all of that. In the sport of boxing, I mean, listen, if you can make the fight on your own and you don't have to use the promoters to do it, they can't control who you're going to fight, when you're going to fight, what kind of audience you're going to end up having, et cetera, that's a beautiful thing. And that's something that can't be ignored, and we understand that. The flip side to it is that I think that I feel sorry for the boxers, because you got legitimate professional boxers out there. I'm not saying that Jake Paul and Logan Paul don't put in the work. Please don't get me wrong. I'm sure that they do, and they work very hard at it from what I'm told. Matter of fact, they're getting trained by professionals and stuff like that. And so I understand they're taking it very, very seriously, and they're to be commended for it, even though they're not going up against, real boxers as of yet. But if you're Floyd Money Mayweather, why? And I, when you talk about an exhibition against Conor McGregor, that's different. He was the biggest star in the UFC. You were the biggest star in boxing. He talked a lot of trash, wanted it, and all of that stuff. And it was incredibly, incredibly entertaining, even though we all knew that Conor McGregor wasn't a boxer per se, even though he was obviously an elite striker in the UFC. I'm just looking at Floyd, and I'm just like, he's going to toy with this guy, etc. I just don't believe that people who don't have a resume per se, because I think Logan Paul only had his record's 0-1 or 1-1, something along those lines, and he's boxed a total of 6 rounds. I don't think someone like that should be in the ring with Floyd Money Mayweather, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, we have ever seen.
Yeah.
It should be a privilege to be in the ring with Floyd Money Mayweather.
Max, where are
That's
you on
not
this?
something that should happen in an exhibition. I just feel
I'll tell you why Floyd is doing this. When you say Floyd, why? Because Floyd Mayweather has made more money since he supposedly retired than he did up in his entire career up to the De La Hoya fight. Because he's getting paid absurd money to box exhibitions against novices. So why wouldn't he do it? And I'm not like a lot of boxing people here, Stephen A. What you just said made a lot of sense in terms of the kind of orthodoxy that the boxing establishment feels when they see stuff like this. And a lot of boxing fans, they feel like it's a sideshow and everything else. Look, boxing has been marginalized in mainstream culture, mainstream sports culture. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it hasn't. Let me tell you the people, because I had Jake Paul on Max on Boxing a couple weeks ago. Let me tell you the people who he says have come to him and said, we love what you're doing for boxing. Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya. It's Floyd Mayweather who's fighting Logan Paul in this exhibition, right? Like Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, Mike Tyson. These are the 3 biggest box office attractions in boxing in the last how many decades? And they recognize it. They say, we like it. You know who likes it? Jermell Charlo, Stephen A. He's like, yeah, I want to fight on the undercard. Because these fighters recognize that they're bringing eyeballs to combat sports. And the way boxing has handled this in the past has not been good. The boxing establishment felt very threatened by the UFC. Not just by MMA, but by the UFC's success in particular. And I've been saying for a long time now, really decades now, instead of being threatened by it, use it as an introduction to combat sports. They're introducing new audiences to combat sports. Go to those people, say, you like combat sports? Maybe you'd like to check us out, instead of being hostile toward it. People they need to know the characters involved to be interested. and they have to believe that there's an interesting obstacle in the way. So they know Floyd. They know Logan Paul. Okay, Floyd is much more experienced, but he's old and he's much smaller. So some people, the less informed, think maybe Logan has a chance to win, right?